Thanks for coming along. Today, I just wanted to talk about Kyusho. Kyusho, the vital points or the nerve points or the pressure points, they're all valid. So let's talk about that today. Patreon family, thank you very much for your ongoing support. Makes a huge difference. I've got a couple of things happening for the upper tier Patreon members. I've got that little 8-page booklet I mentioned. I've finally finished. I'm going to mail that out today. And also I have some news for the Patreon coming up in the next few days. Thanks again, Patreon. It, gosh, makes a difference. Appreciate everything you do. Appreciate your ongoing support. Now, if you've got any questions as we go, please put them down. As usual, I get straight onto them. So today we're talking about Kyusho, nerve points. The iPad that I normally would use to show you the kanji, I lost it. My iPad's gone walkabout. I don't have any way to trace it. I know I had the Find My iPad thing on, but by now the battery is dead. So unfortunate. But anyway, so Kyusho is made up of two kanji. Basically, the second one means a point or a place, and the first one means sudden or rapid or anything abrupt or that sort of thing. So Kyusho, you could say, means the points of abrupt or sudden effect. Okay, there's always conjecture. Do they exist? Do they not exist? What are they? And unfortunately, their existence has been kind of skewed and exaggerated by people who go around trying to sell these online courses about how to take a fully grown, 120 kilogram powerful man out by the tap of a couple of nerve points. There's been enough history in fighting, full contact fighting, boxing, kickboxing, all these things, tens and hundreds of thousands of fights, perhaps millions of fights, where guys are whacking each other at all kinds of points. We don't see a lot of people dying suddenly or dying of heart failure or dying of a sudden breakdown of the nervous system as a result of being hit on these nerve points. Now, having said that, from my own experience, I believe they're very real. Despite that bad rap that they have, I know from my own experience that they exist and we work them all the time in training. We use them all the time in training, primarily as part of the objective to leverage the strength of your technique. Now, the fact is that Kyusho exists in all ranges: kick range, punch range, headbutt, elbow range, grappling range, and ground range. They all exist. The difference is that certain points in certain ranges need very accurate striking, while certain points in certain ranges just need very accurate pressure. Same sort of thing with slightly different results. You can hit someone on certain points with a very powerful impact, and provided they're fairly well conditioned, it'll have far less effect than if you were in a grappling situation and you simply put pressure on them in that point. And that heavy duty pressure at the nerve point will cause them to reshape and try to escape that pressure. We'll get onto that a little later. So we know that they exist. It's not whether they exist or not. We know they exist. It's just putting them in context and keeping it real. We're not looking at a Kyusho jitsu sort of thing where suddenly you hit the 5-point finger touch of death and people drop dead 3 days later. Unfortunately, it's an area that few people really have shown to be tremendously effective with that Kyusho jutsu and everything like that. Just the same as Kiai jutsu, the supposed art of being able to knock someone out with a Kiai. There's been cases where they've been called out. I remember a very interesting tale I heard of one of those very famous Kyusho jutsu masters who was showing his wares. And see, the problem with a lot of those sort of seminars is people are a little respectful, so they don't call them out. But every now and then someone does call them out. And unfortunately, this gentleman was doing a Kyusho Jutsu seminar with some of the top BJJ fighters in the world. One of them was a fellow that I've actually trained with. He wouldn't know me from Bar Soap. He was just in a couple of group sessions that I was doing with Rico Ciparelli, and his name was Valid Ismail. And I believe that what happened was Mr. Dillman was demonstrating this idea. There's a nerve center right here, right where the arm bows up. If you're in a situation, you can hit it, and of course you get a little bit of a dead arm, but it's not going to be too effective because in fighting situation, usually that's protected. It's behind your arm. There's not so many nerve centers along here, and the bone is exposed. So attempts to hit through that often hurt yourself. But where I have used this quite successfully is when you grapple and you put your body weight on that nerve and causes them to move. But he was trying to explain how you hit there, hit here, and you knock them out. So he's actually done that to Valid Ismail, and Valid Ismail's got a little angry. Anyway, he's gone, yeah, but sometimes it's deep, so you've got to go a little harder. And he's going whack, whack, and you hit him again. And Valid Ismail's come back even more angry. And the third time he goes, and some guys are really well trained. You really got to whack it. He goes whack, whack. And Valid Ismail just dropped his head, came flying in, double-legged him, and he's on top of him about to smash him, and everyone pulled him off. So it didn't work too well in that case. And that's a very important point to remember, is that a lot of conditioning that you do and a lot of technical training that you do is designed to protect nerve points. It's designed to condition yourself to be able to take that sort of pressure a little more than the average person. And you may say, well, they're nerve points, so you can't condition them. Not so, because one of the fundamental things that people do in grappling, when they grapple, is they'll use certain nerve points, particularly the nerve points on the inside of the leg, and they'll put their elbow on your thigh, that sort of thing. They'll put the tip of their elbow or even their forearm on the thigh. And for many guys, the pain is so much that they'll actually quickly move out of the way. But I know from my experience with guys that I've trained with who have spent a lot of time in karate, particularly Kyokushin, where they've become used to, whether it's psychological or physiological or both, when they've become used to the impact on those nerve points, it doesn't phase them anywhere near as much. So you can get used to, even if you're not getting used to physiologically, you're definitely getting used to psychologically. And another thing too is the solar plexus. We all know that a good whack to the solar plexus is very debilitating. But look at boxers; they train and train and train, and they work to develop the muscularity around the solar plexus. So it just doesn't have the same effect on a professional boxer as it does on someone less trained. Eagle Claw Kung Fu and Chin Na use effective pressure points. There's a lot of effective pressure points. When I talk about BRATS, when I use the acronym BRATS, which is the balance, the relaxation, accuracy, timing, and speed that you need to develop power in any technique. The A for accuracy is literally being accurate about your nerve target points. Here, in the throat, carotid sinus, etc. We'll go through some of those points in a little while. So basically what they are, there's nothing secret about them. They're simply clusters, if you like, or plexuses of nerves, which make them a little more vulnerable, or in some cases, they're where the nerves, not even a cluster, simply a nerve is more vulnerable because of its position in the body. One that comes to mind is the radial nerve on the inside of the arm here. It's very on the outside here. The radial nerve is there, but on the outside it's protected by muscle and bone. On the inside, it goes between the tricep and the bicep, and right along there is the radial nerve. And a good whack there is very, very very, very effective. And also when you grapple in certain situations, when you're putting arm bars on, you drop your elbow on that nerve point and you get a reaction. Get the likes up, Dance. Good on you, Prod. We support you, and thank you very much. Appreciate that. So sometimes the nerve points or the Kyusho are very obvious. Sometimes they're not. So obvious ones may be, for example, tip of the chin, under here, nose, right here, the center line, in the throat, in the groin. They're pretty obvious. But there's some are somewhat less obvious. Oh, the carotid sinus is quite obvious. But sometimes, under the heart, the spleen shot, or even on the clavicle, they're far less common. The carotid sinus is what do they call it? The Vulcan death touch of Spock in Star Trek. Right there on the carotid sinus, and it's a ripper. And I have used it to effect. And obviously, you're not going to. I didn't even think that when I used it, I would ever knock anyone out. What I use it for is an incredible rapid distraction to allow you to set up your next shot, and that works very, very well. So accuracy is really important. That's why in that acronym, BRATS, the A is accuracy, and it's very, very important because a shot to the solar plexus can be very debilitating, whereas a shot just 2 inches to the left or right can be completely ineffective. It's the same with wrist locks and so on. Certain angles are very, very effective. Some angles aren't effective at all, And one of Masoyama's sayings, which is one of my favorite sayings, Stig, good to see you, man, is know what you're hitting with, where you're hitting to, how you're hitting. Jibun no doko de aite no doko o do yatte utsu, he used to say in Japanese. Know what you're hitting with, where you're hitting to, and how you're hitting. And what that implies is a very high level of accuracy. Techniques just simply are far more effective when they're accurately struck on Kyusho. And this is why we instinctively learn over time, just through trial and error, we learn about many of the Kyusho, but also we need to study them and understand them. And when we do the 30 basics, that's where the accuracy is really important. We strike to the tip of the chin. We do the back fist to the over the eye. We do the side back fist to the liver and the kidney and the spleen. That's, when we, the hizouchi, shito hizouchi, the strike that we practice in basics here is a strike to the tertiary, I call them, nerve points on the side of the body. So generally speaking, just by your experience in training, you start to pick up some of the positions. And are they attached to the Chinese meridians and all that? Or are they not? I don't think it's really important to know. For example, the spleen 11, what they call spleen 11 and spleen 10, they're two nerve points right on the side of your right on the side of the thigh, here and here. And they're very debilitating with a thigh kick. So if you're accurate with your thigh kick, you know where they are, then you can be very accurate with your attacking. But obviously, the whole idea of defense against thigh kicks is to angle your leg correctly so that the nerve points aren't as easily exposed to the attacker. We always say that the art of fighting is the art of sneakiness. So clearly, if I want to hit someone on a particular nerve point and they're aware of protecting those nerve points, then I have to set it up and all this sort of thing. Urs, thanks for coming. Kyokushin Strength. I'm sure that's not your name. But if your dad and mum were Mr. and Mrs. Strength and they named you Kyokushin, well, then that's very, 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 very good on them. Urs, Luke, good to see you. Okay, so that's really important to know that thigh kicks, for example, can be virtually ineffective if they don't hit the right point. But thigh kicks can be absolutely debilitating, almost within the range of 2 or 3 or 4 solid kicks, if they are right on the nerve points. Because when you hit the nerve, it causes spasms in the muscles, and that's what stops you from being able to move. And if you miss the nerve point, you don't get that reaction. So the striking impact of certain points is very, very important to be accurate. When you grapple, it's often a lot easier to find that nerve point because you have time. It's a matter of time. When you grapple, literally things move an inch at a time, and you can change, and you're putting pressure on, and if you're not on the nerve point, you adjust your shoulder and try again. You don't get that opportunity in stand-up fighting where the speed is happening so much. So certain nerve points, I was saying before, that some are more obvious than others. There's a couple of nerve points I use a lot when I grapple, and one is right here inside the shoulder here. You're trying to, someone is protecting really well in the grapple, they're on their back. You can't open them up to expose this area here to create the void to fill. But if you know where to find that nerve point, you can actually put pressure on that nerve point, and it has a tremendous effect. And another one that I've used with a lot of success when I grapple is, of all places, the Achilles tendon. If you get someone who's in all fours and they're protecting their all fours and they're making it hard for you to turn over, all you need to do, and try this, you get someone say, just go on all fours, and you pull and push, and you'll find that if they have a degree of understanding of how to base themselves in the all fours, they can be very hard to flip over. A good, strong all fours player is very hard to play. But the reality is you put your shin, so you just, if their Achilles is exposed, if it's not, well, then you expose it. But you put your shin across the Achilles tendon, and just when you're set, you get yourself set for the next move, so there's not a gap between their movement and you're taking advantage of that. You set yourself up, and then when you're ready, you lean your weight right on that shin on the Achilles, and they will almost jump forward like a frog because of the nerve shock that they'll get. And I'm only telling you that because if you do it to me when we grapple, if you get me on my right leg, you're laughing. But if you do it on my left leg, it won't work because I snapped my in the 2000 over 40s World Championship, in the semi-final of that World Championship, I snapped my Achilles tendon. It was a total rupture. So I came back, had it reattached, and I had a good surgeon. Right now, it's stronger and longer than it ever was, but also the nerve is there, but it's interrupted. So I have maybe 10% of that same pressure that I would have felt before. So if you do it on my left leg, don't be surprised if I don't react the same way. Thigh kicks are what separates Kyokushin from the sport karate guys. Yeah, I've seen many Shotokan limp off the mat. Yep. That's true. And it's a conditioning thing. That's all. Doesn't matter who you are. If you condition your legs properly, you can get used to it. And the conditioning isn't just a matter of knowing, of building up resilience with the nerve points. It's also a matter of learning to shape your body correctly so that you have the correct alignment. And that's why you may recall when I talk about the quintessential core 54, and I talk also in the 7 stages of Kumite, one of those stages is about defensive shapes. And what I mean by defensive shape is simply having the body in the correct way so that you can minimize the effect of your opponent's shots on your body. So obviously, if I'm standing here like this, my opponent's shots are going to have open slather. But if my elbows are forward and in, I wear it on the strong parts of my arm. Skill acquisition has been somewhat pushed to one side by information gathering, but knowing. That's true, Mike. That's the inch wide and mile deep things, like Bruce Lee said. Don't fear a man who knows 10,000 kicks. Fear a man who has done one kick 10,000 times. I remember I'm a karate club, but some of our guys grapple. I remember many years ago I went to a BJJ seminar and with two of my students, um, and this seminar also included a grading, and they were white belts, but they were grappling with guys who were going for colored belts and everything, and they literally knew 1/10, if that, of what these guys knew, but they absolutely dominated everyone in the role simply because what they knew really well. In fact, one of those lads competed in the Queensland Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu titles. He knew 2 takedowns, 2 control positions, and 2 submissions, and he tapped everyone and won the gold medal based on those. In fact, all his taps were essentially just one of those submissions. He didn't need the other one. So, like Mike says, you don't want to go pushing aside depth for breadth. You need to take your time with a skill, and that skill acquisition also means acquiring the accuracy to know where it is most effective. Uh, we have an old saying from Chinese martial arts where they say, "Hit hard with soft, soft with hard." That's one of the origins of the word goju, karate goju, hard, soft, jujitsu, soft fighting art, judo, soft art. Uh, so and even in Shorinji Kempo, which is a lovely fighting art, they have Goho and Juho, which means the techniques of hardness and the techniques of softness. And the techniques of hardness are impact, hitting, punching, that sort of thing. The techniques of softness involve turning and locking and finding those pressure points in a grappling situation. So the Chinese say, hit hard with soft, soft with hard. It makes a lot of sense. Probably, especially in a self-defense situation, because you don't want to. You do what you want. I don't care. But if you're in a self-defense, a fighting situation, and you punch someone in the face with your knuckles, and you slightly miss, and their tooth cuts your hand, well, the mouth is incredibly septic, so you can really infect yourself. So hitting the bone with your bone can lead to broken fingers. Mike Tyson hit Mitch Green, broke his finger. But if you hit bone with soft, so you hit the bone with palm heels, you hit the bone with knife hand, that sort of thing, it's very, very effective. And you hit soft with hard. So if you're hitting the solar plexus, hit it with your knuckles. Okay, if you want to hit the carotid sinus, hit it with your koken, works very well. That's just a theory. Of course, if your hands are strong enough, you can hit them anywhere. It's not going to matter. But the principal idea of hitting hard with soft and soft with hard is actually a really smart thing to do. Hey, Gabby, got my Canadian mug, eh? Okay, so another area, yeah, the bass root and slap right on the carotid sinus. And also a sharp hook, which makes the head spin like that, is very effective, because when the brain sloshes around inside, it fires off all these nerve impulses that tell the body it's in danger, so it blacks out and drops down. So that's very valuable too with the cross face strike. One area that we do work on a fair bit in our training in terms of Kyusho is wrist locks. And my buddy Paul Kale, he showed me the wrist locks that they learn in Aikido. Of course, we all learn them over time, but he showed me a flow, which I know I got wrong, but I just got it wrong in terms of order. I found a different order. So that idea of all wrist locks being released. What's Harold? You're pretty awesome yourself, man. Thanks for coming along. All wrist locks in all techniques can be boiled down to a variation of 5 fundamental wrist locks that attack the nerves of the wrist. Now, just like, for example, if I want to, I've used this pressure point here in the carotid sinus, but if you want to use that, there's no point in pushing in there unless if with an impact thing, it happens so fast, you don't need support on the other side. But if you're pushing here and there's nothing behind, they're just going to move their head away. So what I used to do was like a claw, and I'd hit my thumb in the front of the carotid sinus and I'd squeeze. And like I said, the objective wasn't necessarily to get a knockout, even though sometimes a leg would go weak. What I do is I get that temporary pause. It's like in chess, you talk about getting a tempo on them, or that you get a tempo on them, and it allow you to set up your next shot much more effectively. But anyway, the wrist flow that we do, and I want to share it with you because it's really valuable. I'm just going to move this computer back a little bit. As you can see, I'm here today with my buddy Vincent Van Gogh in the background. I'm going to do these wrists. So we do a 5 wrist lock flow. Us, Ben, good to see you, man. All well. So far, so good. We do a 5 wrist lock. So here's how you do it. And watch, and if you want to replay it, it's a really good way to warm up your wrists, but also learn the accurate angles. So the first one is this: 1, 2, 3, 4. This is how we do it. Switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn over and come up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, just a point of accuracy with that, I take the back of my hand and I line it up with my center line. Not that if you do it over here, it's still going to be effective, but there's reasons why it's good to line it up with the center. So now we turn the hand over. 1, 2, 3, 4. This hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn the hand over. Take the back of my hand and push up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Us, Paddy. Good to see you, man. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn over. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the third one, watch. This hand rotates anti-clockwise out. So I go from there out. Now when I do it, I leave this hand on the back of the hand and I swivel. Now I grab the thumb. 1, 2, 3, 4. So once again, 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn over. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rotate. Hold the thumb. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the third one. Okay, now watch the fourth one, because this one is incredibly effective in a grappling situation, and the next one is incredibly effective, particularly against grabs to the collar and grabs to the wrist. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn over. 1, 3, 4. Rotate. Take the beefy part of the thumb. I think it's called the mound of Venus. You take that, and look, I take my hand straight down the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now watch. I rotate the hand in the opposite direction. So now my thumb is facing down, my finger's facing up. And then I pull my little finger directly down my center line towards me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Watch again. Other hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rotate. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rotate the thumb out. Hold the thumb. Push down. 1, 2, 3, 4. And from there, rotate my thumb towards me, like I'm tapping myself on the nose, until my fingers are exposed up. Then I once again grab across the knuckle line here, and I twist my fingers towards me. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is blindingly effective against wrist grabs and so on. You shock people how effective it is. And I swear, if you do it hard and fast against a non-compliant opponent, you will damage their wrist to the point where they may not get full use of it back again. Yes, that's good, Ben. It's really, it's funny you say that. I do these combined with these and these, okay, Masayamas. I do them for my own wrist health, because I find as I get older, my hands, I'm fighting, I'm warding off old age and genetic arthritis. So I keep my hands very, very mobile. Okay. So the fifth one, so we go 1, 2, Paul, wie geht's, mein Freund? 3, 4, back. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rotate the thumb up and out. Grab the thumb down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ush, Frederick, good to see you. And rotate the thumb. I'm trying to tap myself on the nose. Rotate the thumb until the little finger is out and up. Then I take the back of my hand and I turn my hand this way. From the side, I'm doing that. You see that? And I keep it aligned with the center of my chest. It's very effective. You'll find when you do this, it's really amazing that if I line it up to my shoulder and do it, you'll get an effect, but nowhere near the same. If I line it up to the other shoulder and do it, your opponent usually has a way to slip out of it. But if I line it up dead set to the center line, even on myself when I'm doing it, it's much stronger. So that's a really important point about the accuracy of this. You can be 1 degree off there, 1 degree off there, and it's 50% as effective. But if it's accurate, it will deliver. It'll have an effect immediately. Okay. Now the fifth one, I simply turn my hand horizontal. Then I push my thumb under my armpit. See, like that? Now I add to it and turn the hand under the armpit like that. I'm doing a video on these to show you how you can use them. And it'll be part of the new app that I'm doing. I'll tell you more about the app next week. Pretty exciting. There. Okay, the other hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rotate. That's the position now. Thumb towards me. Up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rotate out. Thumb pointing away. Hold the thumb down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just so for accuracy, the 4 fingers are around the thumb, but your thumb is pushing there, around that area there. Down. 3, 4. Rotate the thumb towards me like I'm tapping my nose. Keep going till the little finger is up. Then it's like I put my hands like that. I put it right on behind and I grab and turn the wrist up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I simply take it horizontal and turn it under my armpit and rotate that way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, they're the 5 major wrist locks of Aikido: Ikkyo, Nikkyo, Sankyo, Yonkyo, Gokyo. And all the techniques of Aikido, you could argue, come off those 5 wrist locks. And one area, Matus, good to see you. One area that some grappling arts minimize, and one of them, yes. Yeah. I have no doubt that Kyokushin took a lot of its warm-up techniques and everything. Masayama clearly borrowed them from, just making a point for myself here. Masayama clearly took them from Goju. He was infinitely influenced by Goju. So there'd be more similarities than differences. There's no doubt about that. Just turning my clock on so I don't lose track of time. So those 5 are really great, not only to warm up your wrists, but to teach you the correct angles that you can get really successful wrist locks on. And I'll do that. They're in everything, Muzz. Yeah, I have no doubt. Because it all stems from that Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, or what they called Taijutsu, which was what Aiki Jiu-Jitsu was originally called, and which I think a lot of ninjutsu actually, rather than call themselves ninjutsu, because sometimes they felt as though it was a beat up term, they started to employ the word Taijutsu again. Very interesting. So the Kyusho, let's look at them and where they are. And this is really valuable for instructors because it's very easy to understand where the Kyusho are. We have in kata, you might remember I have the symbol that I have for a block is a lock, is a blow, is a throw, which is a circle with 4 angles like that. In kata, you have strikes at 90 degrees and 45 degrees. The reason you have them at 90 degrees and 45 degrees is simply because the human body is round. If the human body was square, clearly it'd only be 90 degrees. But because it's round, some are at 45 degrees. And in that process, it's that 45-degree angle that finds some of the nerve points. So we have 3 fundamental lines that are useful to the martial artist. The first one is what we call Chushin-sen, which is the center line. So we have the nerve points down the center line between the eyes, the nose, the jinchu right here, which is very shocking to the nerves. And you can hit it and try and knock them out, but a snap back fist or a snap jab, very effective right here. The chin, obviously, the throat, the point just below the throat, the solar plexus, the pit of the stomach, the bladder. Bladder is great to hit. One of the best things in the world you can ever do in a street fight is don't try and kick them anywhere except right on their belt buckle, because that way, usually they've had too much to drink anyway, and it can be very, very shocking to the nerves. And you go down below the bladder to the groin. Well, they're your center lines. Now you turn around, you go to the back. One way to tell whether a technique is effective is ask yourself, is it illegal in MMA? And in MMA, they're very, very strict about strikes along the center line, on the back. So you can't hit them on the top of the head. You can't hit them on the back of the head or down the spine. And in MMA, when you teach people to referee MMA, I don't referee anymore, but I had a lot to do with teaching a lot of guys to referee. It's like a mohawk. So you visualize a mohawk, and anything on that mohawk is illegal to hit. So you have that mohawk, we call it that mohawk line. Anything along the back of that mohawk is illegal to hit. On the sides, it's legal because it's much safer. So that's your center line, front and back. The secondary line is along the side. So that's the nerves along the side here. So you have the nerve right below the ear, which is really useful for grappling. You get an elbow, grind it right on that nerve point behind the ear, and it's very, very effective. Then you have the carotid sinus. Everyone knows the carotid sinus. When we do shito uchi-uchi or kubi-uchi, we're striking the neck. When we do mawashi geri with the shin on the neck, we're aiming for the carotid sinus. And the easy way to find it is you have this sheath of muscle. It's called the sternocleidomastoid. And you aim for that towards the center line, and that's where you'll find that carotid sinus. You keep going down the side, Inside the arm, you have the radial nerve. That's why the human body is like a turtle. Everything is protected from the outside. You keep going down, you have the floating ribs. So you have, if you think about well, you can almost see it there, that line there, floating ribs up to the solar plexus. 1, 2, 3, down to there like that. You have these lines, these nerves. Then one which you'll find is quite effective, especially in Kyokushin when you have conditioned shins, is when you actually kick the side of the hip. You can really numb, you can really affect a muscle spasm by hitting hard on the side of the hip with a roundhouse kick. You keep going down, you have what we were talking about before. You have those nerve points that we mentioned. You might remember I was saying there's a connection between the what do they call it? The Chinese meridians, and you have what they call the spleen 10 and the spleen 11, the 2 points on the side of the leg. They're very effective as well. Sometimes if you're not sure where those nerve points are, if you put your hands down by your side, generally speaking, where your fingertips are is the exact line for that nerve point that you want to hit with the kicks. And that one down below the fingertips, generally that's spleen 10. Now, if you want to get another one, if you think in terms of, if I can stand up and show you, here like this, if the hand's here, right here is spleen 10, and on the wrist is spleen 11. So they're your two main targets. So what you can do is, if you're about to spar with someone, you make a very formal gesture of putting your hands by your side and bowing. And when they do the same thing, you see exactly where the fingertips are. You say, thank you very much. And that's where you kick them. Bit of a sneaky one. And then going down, continuing down below spleen 10, of course, you have the knee, the outside of the knee, and Kansetsu attacks right on the outside of the knee. And there's the spleen 9, actually, on the outside of the knee. Didn't tell you I studied acupuncture many years ago. I never completed it. But anyway, very interesting. There are certain points on the outside of the calf muscle, one point called stomach 36. Look that up. That's very effective and debilitating. Okay, so they're your secondary line of the Kyusho, the nerve points. And a third one, of course, is the 45-degree angle. So 45 at the front, as I mentioned, the floating ribs, and also a good kick in the 45-degree angle of the hip can really affect their energy and fold them over like that. And then also at the back, of course, you've got the kidney shots and the at the back there. They're also illegal in most fighting systems. So it's not a difficult thing to find the take care, Shian. Yeah, good to see you, Ben. Thanks for coming. Every time a tram goes past, I look to see if it's you. They're not hard to find, but they're really worth working on. And if you get a chance to grapple, there are some great techniques, which I'll show you in the future, about ways that you can use those nerve points a lot. When I grappled with Jean Labelle, anyone who's grappled with Jean Labelle will tell you that the second he's touching you, you're in pain. And it's not just a nice gesture to say that about Jean Labelle. Literally, everywhere he touched you, he was hitting a nerve point with even he would use that palm heel here. He'd put it on his nerve and elbows and forearms and radius, the ulnar bone across. And everywhere he touched you, you're in pain. That's because he had an intimate understanding of the Kyusho. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that today because someone brought it up at training last night about these nerves. So I thought, yeah, well, I'll talk about that today. So remember, the primary line is down the center. Know where they are. Here, solar plexus. stomach, bladder, groin. The side, temple, obviously, below the ear, carotid sinus, radial bone, a radial nerve, floating ribs, point of the hip, spleen 11, spleen 10, spleen 9. And you go further down to the calf, stomach 36. Yeah, he's not too bad, Marco. He's 89 now, and I get the feeling. See, not recently, probably a year ago. We're talking about Jean LaBelle here, by the way. I spoke to him. I speak to him regularly, but he told me that about a year ago he stopped grappling, and because he didn't have the proprioception, he didn't have the awareness to be able to counter even fundamental moves with people, and two, he just didn't have the energy. He'd do one session and he'd have to recover. His body's in a lot of pain after 80 years of training. Not many people can say that. And also, sadly, he lives in California, and California's a mess. You got the political system there's out of balance, and you've got homeless people everywhere, and no one's allowed to do anything about them. Murderers there was a case recently where 5 guys tortured and murdered a guy, and they're so politically correct that those guys went to jail, but they'll be out when they're still young enough to have a family, sort of thing. So he was saying he'd go out to his front porch, and there was a homeless person who'd set up home on his porch, front gate, lawn, house, up the stairs, in the porch, and this homeless guy, and he said, "Get out of my house." He says, "You can't tell me to move on because California's got these funky laws about protecting the homeless." So you combine his getting old, the injuries, the lack of energy to do what he loves most, which is rolling. Even I can remember when I was there training with him, he was in his 60s, and the energy and the enthusiasm and the fun and the love that he'd have rolling all the time, he just doesn't have that now. You talk to him and it's really, really, it's clear that he's running out of energy, and he's not as enthusiastic about life, but he still has a great sense of humor, and still tells me that I'm very ugly. So that is fun. But anyway, yeah, 89. He's had a good innings. I speak to him most weeks just to tell him how much I love him and tell him that the world still thinks he's very important. So anyway, I'll wind it up there today. I hope you got something out of that. Think about your Kyusho. Think about your wrist movements to control those wrist locks. In grappling, if you can whack on a wrist lock, remember, to control a wrist lock, you got to control the elbow. If you can control that, you can achieve amazing things against even good grapplers. So thank you. What's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very simple to remember. Us. Thank you, everybody. See you next week, guys. Us. Appreciate your time and energy. Thank you.